Welcome back to Love, Money, Rock and Roll. We left off after getting into a fight, I guess, with Ellie. Who knows? Either way, I think she's mad. Let's get into it. I'd always found tricks like that difficult. It impressed me how effortlessly they came to some people. Kagome, for instance. She was spinning a pen with all 5 of her fingers at a speed that made her hand look like a race car, and mine a Toyota from the 1930s. Annoyed, I slammed my pencil back onto the desk loudly and was reprimanded by the teacher for it. You're an idiot. Back to Ellie. Was her irresponsible or irrepressible love of fun really the only part of the problem? It was worrying how defensive she got every time I tried to discuss it with her. I was trying to take Ellie's favorite toy from her. I could understand that, but was I just a toy to her as well? You grow out of playing with toys, or get tired of them, and if they break, it isn't much of a deal. Yeah, drugs are an addiction, and addictions can really mess you up. What you think about, pal? Kyosuke. Hello. Kyosuke approached me during break, slowly looked around, brushed off the chair next to me, and sat on with such caution you'd think he was afraid to break it. Just about everything and nothing. Right, I see. He scratched his chin thoughtfully and went silent. You see what? Ellie-sama has finally decided that a peasant like you is no match for her? Uh-huh, she sure has. I said idly, more to play along with the stupid game. Really? Whoops. He started clumsily collecting his notebooks and textbooks from the floor. Nejima won't be happy. He won't notice anything, I'll be quick. Kyosuke was panting like he'd ran half a marathon. Having finished, he no longer looked quite so happy. So where everything's alright with you two? Depends on what you'd call alright. Well, some people doing alright don't say that. I just shrugged in response and looked at the pencil that stubbornly refused to spin at the speed I wanted. I couldn't spin a pencil in my fingers if I wanted to. Nick, you're my friend, and Ellie-sama's Ellie-sama, so I have to be the first to know all the details. Asking to be a fly on the wall? I'm not planning that far ahead, but I wouldn't say no to it. His facial expression suddenly changed. Wait, have you already had that, you know? Are you asking whether we've had sex yet? I said emotionlessly. Sekasu. He said disgustingly in only the Japanese way. English? Can't speak. Kyosuke, for Christ's sake, you're overreacting a simple physiological process. You know, Nick, the rich really don't know how the other half lives. He empathetically crossed his arms over his chest and turned away. That's when our weird English teacher came into the classroom. He looks like a hippie. Or a hipster. And here comes Rando. Kyosuke scoffed. Since our school is supposed to be an elite one, students were expected to know English well enough to communicate with native speakers by the time they graduated. But Mr. Stone didn't know a word of Japanese, which made the whole situation strange. Hi, fellows. How are you? He cheerfully weighted us with the attendance list. Never better. Although I personally wasn't bothered at all. Which you couldn't say about Kyosuke, whose academic record generally wasn't outstanding. We're discussing girls, or was that my imagination? Mind if I I don't think you'll find it interesting. This is definitely crossing the border between teacher professionalism and not. What's he talking about? He's asking when you're gonna lose some weight. I immediately replied, I'm not gonna compete with you for the heart of a young beauty, but I still have a few arrows left in my quiver. That sounded ridiculous because he looked about 25. Mr. Stone, we believe you entirely. Nick, why the formalities? I've told you many times, just call me Lowland. As much as I disliked formalities myself, fraternizing with a teacher like this seems weird to me. It would to everybody. Kyosuke's embarrassed, you know him. Kyosuke what? My chubby friend pulled on the sleeve of my jacket. See? In wasting your time on embarrassment, you might miss something important in life. He said thoughtfully and scratched his little beard. You do know that I came to Japan primarily to learn Zen Buddhism, right? It clearly wasn't to teach English, he wasn't exactly good at that. The idea of finding harmony between oneself and nature has been distorted in the West. Ancient practices have been put to serve short-term gains, and their core, their integrity, has been brutally torn from them. Meditation is meant to be used as a tool to learn a judgment-free perception of reality, not to relieve stress after a hard day spent in a battle for capitalistic ideals. And I believe that only here in the East do people still preserve the true ideals of Buddhism. Yeah, I'd be Kyosuke in this situation, extremely confused. I quickly glanced at Kyosuke, who was batting his eyes in clear confusion, and found myself doubting that Rando would be able to find what he was looking for here. This is all very interesting, Mr. Stone. I'm not saying that you should cast off every worldly and leave for a monastery, not at all. While you're young, you have every right to enjoy life. No, we don't. Corporations are evil. Yes, they are. It was strange to hear that from a man who worked at a school mostly running on Kobayashi Corporation money. You understand me? We understand you perfectly, Mr. Stone, I said enthusiastically. What is he saying here? Kyosuke wouldn't stop. Then I hope today's lesson will go without any problems. He got embarrassed and walked to his desk. Rando at his best. Why do you even call him Rando? Most other people were better than Kyosuke at English, but almost none of the Japanese students were happy that Mr. Stone couldn't speak a single word of their language. So he was often ignored or openly teased. To give him some credit, he took it calmly and when could fired back with some clever responses. But the words of the strange English teacher, Lowland Stone, had found a place in my heart. If all of us, myself included, were just supposed to fight corporations, did that mean I had to fight Ellie too? I didn't see her as a representative of all the evil the Kobayashi Corporation had committed. If not for my parents' death, I would have been happy to date the heir to $1 million company. That car accident, I'd convinced myself I had no time to think about it, that I had more important things to worry about. But was that really the case? Was I just cowardly ignoring the moral dilemmas I couldn't or didn't want to resolve? Still, even if there was a cauldron kept ready in hell just for Kobayashi Jin, Ellie had nothing to do with it. Sins of the father do not carry over to the children. That's a horrible idea. Or concept in general. Deep in my thoughts, I didn't know the bell rang or Mr. Stone politely asked the students to take their seats. But far from everyone listened to him. Lunch break is always the busiest time. Some people run to the cafeteria right after class to get the best seats. Some take out bennos they had brought with them, and some, like me, just sit and look out the window, expecting lunch to find them on its own. Kyosuke went to another class on very important business, while Michael helped Mr. Stone bring a huge map of the US he dragged in for the lesson back to the staff room. I was about to head to the cafeteria, just sitting around hungry was a bad idea after all when Kagome approached me. Yep. She's probably gonna have something super sus to say again. Wanna have lunch with me? She put a bento box on my desk. Not really. I remembered Kagome's promise not to talk to me at school. If you don't, I'll leave at once. Rejecting her offer wasn't easy, but it wasn't even about Kagome specifically, just normal politeness. Thank you. She sat opposite to me on an empty chair and put an identical bento in front of her. The bento was delicious, as expected from Kagome. She was eating quietly, constantly glancing at me. No, more like blatantly staring. Do I have rice on my face? No, why do you ask? Because you're looking at me so... I don't know, like this. What else am I supposed to look at? She asked with genuine surprise. In another situation, if there was someone else in Kagome's place, I'd think she was flirting with me. Because she is, and she's crazy. Kagome. I started as politely as I could. Just tell me honestly, what are you trying to achieve? Do I need any special reason to thank my savior, even by just offering this humble bento? Enough already. Nikolai, not everyone has an ulterior motive. What are you hinting at? Who indeed? She pretended to be, seriously thinking about it. I wanted to stand up and leave, but something was stopping me. If I didn't know you, I think you're in love with me. Do you know me, Nikolai? Kagome had fallen in love with me. No way. Could I explain Catherine's, Himitsu's, Ellie's feelings for me with logic alone? And if it was more or less clear than the first two, Ellie's feelings remained a mystery to me to this day. Thanks for the bento, but I don't think it's entirely appropriate. Are you afraid of Kobayashi's jealousy? I am not. She carefully examined the classroom, noticed us, and came close without a second's hesitation. Nick? Kagome? She greeted us politely as if she were addressing her teachers. Kobayashi-san. Kagome tilted her head slightly. Hi, we're, eating. Having lunch, I see. Sorry for disturbing you. You haven't disturbed us at all. I'm the one who should apologize. Kagome interrupted, took her bento, and stood up. Please, take a seat. What was that? I see you two have a good relationship now. Ellie, it's nothing. Don't think that. What am I supposed to think? Nothing. Ellie glanced at my bento, then suddenly grabbed the box and chopsticks that lay next to it on the desk. That's very good. Did she make it? Clearly not me. She'd make for a perfect Japanese wife. Ellie, enough already. I realize how it looks from the outside, but I don't know what's on Kagome's mind. What's on her mind? When she finished, she gave me a satisfied smile and said, Please pass my regards on to the chef. I'll make sure to. I scoffed grimly. And I should go, I still have stuff to do. Ellie, wait. What else? I wanted to say that. See you after school. Can't make it today. The girls and I are going to karaoke. After all, I have my own friends apart from you. Something struck her and she gave me a predatory smile. Just like you do. Bye. Ellie left, leaving me with an uncomfortable feeling of words left unspoken. Yes, she had misunderstood Kagome's intentions, but were they clear to me? And most importantly, were they clear to Kagome? Sometimes it seemed to me that girl's actions were decided by a random number generator. Although Ellie's love seemed just as random. I had a headache because of the constant thoughts, and a stomachache because Ellie ate most of the bento, leaving me hungry. I headed for the vending machines and bought several lemon buns. That sounds very delicious. I have no idea what they are. On the way back, I met Takehito. Takehito-san? She suddenly stopped. Are you on your own today? How unusual. If I didn't know you, I'd say that was sarcasm. Do you know me? Do you know me? Nikolai? Jesus, did I know anyone at the school? No, you don't. You knew Himitsu. And then she bailed, because you broke her heart. Multiple times, because we're a jerk in this playthrough. Well, I definitely knew Kyosuke. Just before the bell rang, he returned to the class and walked to me. I just saw Ellie-sama. She seemed upset. Did you say something to her? My entire life doesn't revolve around Ellie, you know. Although, you wouldn't say that looking at my life lately. Nick, if you want to know, ask her yourself. Kyosuke grumbled something and returned to his seat. I suddenly felt ashamed for treating him like this. He wasn't doing it out of a malice. It was just his personality. I had no other friends but him. What about Michael? Are you gonna ignore Michael, dude? Class was over pretty soon, and I realized it was the first time in a while I had some time for myself. Ellie had her own plans. Himitsu was gone, and we'd probably never see each other again. Probably not. Catherine had vanished from my life just as quickly as she'd entered it. So I only had Ellie. The flighty, uncontrollable, wayward Ellie. I was walking without aim and soon ended up. Oh, you're gonna drink your problems away. That doesn't work. I didn't want to be a bad example for Ellie, although she seemed doing a fine job self-destructing without my help. Nikolai? A familiar voice I've been hearing way too often called out to me. I turned around and saw Kagome standing nearby with an innocent look to her, holding her school bag. Have you been following me? Not at all. That's a lie. Did you like the bento? Yeah, thanks. It was delicious. Glad to hear it. Right now, something about her reminded me of Himitsu. I hope you didn't have a fight with Kobayashi because of me. You have nothing to do with that. So you two did fight. Kagome looked upset, and I found it hard to tell if she was pretending or not. What difference does that make to you? Well, I'm worried about you. Is that so hard to believe? Her surprise seemed genuine even. Worried, but Kagome's question was fair. Yes, she hadn't always behaved appropriately before, but I always thought that people can change. Especially having lived through what she had. Even real criminals feel remorse sometimes. Real criminals, I smirked internally. As if I still believed Kagome was guilty, even though the police no longer suspected her. Yes, I am, because I like you. You like me? I exhaled. I wanted to say I'm grateful for you saving my father and getting me out of jail and stuff. You should make a girl say these things. I didn't. With the difference between that Kagome had the script while I had to improvise. Fine, let's not just stand outside when we go in. If it's an invitation, I guess it is. I didn't even know why I started this. Maybe I really didn't want to talk in the middle of the street and couldn't summon the courage to shoo Kagome away after what she'd said. Koya, hi. The bartender, obviously previously bored to death, quickly latched onto me. I see you aren't alone. A new girl every day. My respect. You'd be a great guy if he only didn't talk so much. I whispered to Kagame, but she just smiled cutely in response. We sat as far away from the bar as possible. I ordered a cola and she got herbal tea. I thought you'd get a beer. Who do you think I am? It's only 3 in the afternoon. You were thinking about getting beer until she showed up. Yeah, right. How did she even know I like to drink? Stalking you. Also, you're Russian. Is everything going well between you and Kobayashi? Why are you asking? Don't know. From the outset, it seems like... Seems like what? Call it feminine intuition. And what's your feminine intuition telling you? I'm not trying to stand between you two. But what are you doing? Believe it or not, I'm actually worried about you. Worried, and do you think Ellie isn't a good match for me? I didn't say that. Right, you didn't say anything. I scoffed and regretted not actually ordering a beer. The entire conversation seemed unnatural, and I could barely understand what I was doing here. You can always count on me. She raised her hand as if intending to touch my face, but stopped at the last moment and smiled apologetically. So it was becoming more and more obvious that she had feelings for me. Or at least she was trying to show them as hard as she could. Look, I don't want to offend you, but I've already got a girlfriend. And do you love her? She asked without blinking an eye. Love. I repeated as if trying to remember the meaning of this word. The worst of all, there was no answer to the question that would satisfy me. I'm happy with it, for now. Don't you see that she's using you? Using me how? Asked with surprise. Kiyome just shrugged and took a sip. Trying to get something out of her system? Are you into psychology? Only the applied kind. To be honest, I thought on occasion that Ellie only saw me as a convenient way to satisfy her needs rather than an actual person. Needs like security, love, intimacy, passion, or whatever else. But of course, I couldn't confess that to Kagame. That's all very interesting, but I have to go. My treat. I didn't want to see Kagame anymore today. Just the idea of her was suddenly painful to me. Seems like it's gonna be a nice night. Kagame walked to the bar after me. Stood behind me, stretching and letting out a cute moan. Don't you have to go home? What about your restaurant? I'm already leaving. Kagame is all she managed to say when Ellie appeared from around the corner. Nick? Oh, hi. What brought you here? I just left the karaoke place. It's close by. What are you doing here, though? Oh, I was getting a drink. I just happened to come across Nikolai, and he invited me to spend some time with him at the bar. Oh, he invited you. How nice of him. In this situation, I couldn't bring myself to chastise Ellie for being angry. Yeah, you're a moron. And if you play the Kagome route, you know that they are related. I didn't feel guilty, but at the same time I felt ashamed. I understand there's no need for excuses. First you have lunch together, now you're hitting bars. We're just friends. And you're already friends? She flung her arms up in the air and smirked powerlessly. Yeah, what's wrong with that? Nothing. Kobayashi, it's not like Nikolai is your property. Property? Nobody's talking about property, he's just... Her face showed intense internal strain. Capable of choosing his friends? Kagame finished for her and looked up to me, right? I was caught between a rock and a hard place and didn't know what to do. I was supposed to be taking Ellie's side, but I couldn't persuade myself that she was right. After all, it's not like I was interrogating her about who she'd gone to the karaoke and why. Ellie, we really did meet on pure accident. And just couldn't part ways? Sorry, but I don't have to tell you about every single person I talk to who isn't you. You don't have to? She said, embarrassed, pressed her lips together. Of course you don't. I'm just worried about you. But if it wasn't me Nikolai was talking to, everything would be fine? Kagome smirked. How do you... Ellie grit her teeth but managed to hold back. I couldn't understand why she hated Kagame so much. And it clearly wasn't just trivial jealousy. Actually, maybe Ellie knew that they're related. That's why they don't like each other. Plot point. Nick, if you want to spend time with her, be my guest. What do I care? Ellie raised her nose, turned around, and prepared to leave. Wait. I grabbed her hand, but at the same moment, caught Kagome's gaze on me. Not the most pleasant of situations. I don't want to be rude, but it's time for you to go. I addressed Kagame. Well, thanks for the tea. Kobayashi? She squinted slyly and finally left. I released Ellie's hand and it hung powerlessly against her body. Here, see? Ellie's behavior didn't make much logical sense, but emotionally it was very coherent. Well, she's on drugs, so what do you expect? And the best solution right now would be to assure her of my eternal love, except I couldn't bring myself to. Are you happy now? I am. Ellie finally turned to me, her face devoid of any expression. I don't know what's on Kagome's mind, but I don't enjoy her advances any more than you. Do you? You look pretty happy at lunch. Because it was tasty. You tried it yourself. Fine, I understand, she said, phlegmatically. What do you understand? Everything? And I have to go. There's a lot of homework to do. Homework? I don't remember it ever bothering you. I mean, Ellie usually did her homework when she found the time, but I couldn't say she cared much beyond that. I suppose Kagome is a straight A student? How would I know? I just don't want to lag behind. Ciao. Don't forget about the rehearsal tomorrow. This time I didn't stop her, tired of arguing about each and every one of her stupid ideas. She'd probably come to her senses and apologize tomorrow. Or not. But I still felt somewhat uneasy. I couldn't get Ellie's upset, arrogant expression out of my mind. Maybe it was the look of a model in a beauty pageant having taken second place. Now sitting in the dressing room, the camera's no longer directed at her. What would I think if I saw Ellie with a guy I didn't like? Knowing myself, I wouldn't like any guy I saw around her more than once. And this was Kagome we were talking about. But I couldn't influence Kagome's behavior, except maybe by telling her to F off. But that would only be indulging Ellie's whims. And what would be next? I felt more and more that I was, willingly or unwillingly, adapting my life, actions, even my thoughts to Ellie's wishes. I did everything to not offend her or spoil her mood. Oh god, I'd become Hamitsu. At first, I justified it by the need for Kobayashi-jun's protection. Then I tried to persuade myself that I liked the relationship, that I liked Ellie. No, I really did like her, but how much of it was love and how much was pity? I suddenly realized that in many ways, she suffered more than I did, more than anybody I knew. The drugs, the music, even her occasionally exaggerated love for me were evidence of that. Meanwhile, I'd been stuck in the relationship long before I realized it, and now there was no way back. Yeah, because if you cheat on Ellie, you'll probably get killed by Kobayashi. I had to reread each paragraph several times to keep track of the story. The sudden realization of the essence of my feelings towards Ellie was annoying me. What good was I as a savior if I couldn't even help myself? But Ellie loved me. At least I thought she did. She trusted me. Who else, if not I? Jugo. 15. Pretty sure. Either way, the dinner with Kagome and the following conversation gave Ellie enough reason to grow jealous. Even if I didn't believe I'd done anything wrong as a man, I had to apologize and somehow prove my words with action. It was a hard night. I seemed to be sleeping, but at the same time, I could almost always see my room and the sunrise over Tokyo through the dream, hearing the birds singing in the yard. In the end, I woke up in the morning with the feeling that someone had poured metal cast iron into my head and let it solidify. On the other hand, given my generally dull condition, the idea of a serious conversation with Ellie didn't scare me as much as it could. Once I got to school, I immediately went to her classroom, but Ellie was nowhere to be found. A classmate said that she was yet to show up today. Probably skipping school. To do cocaine. Because drugs are bad, kids. Then the second one. I checked the old music classroom to no result. When I was walking back in desperation, I met Takehito. Anoken, good afternoon. Same to you. Have you seen Ellie? Aren't you two together? I couldn't understand whether she was mocking me or not, so I turned around and pointed at the empty corridor behind me. Does it look like she's around? The local morality police officer smirked. You see what? That Kobayashi has finally come to her senses. If she's not at school today, it's not a reason to draw far-fetched conclusions, you know. Indeed, then where is she? She went to the doctor or something. If you know how long, oh screw you. I waved her away and passed by, giving the girl a threatening look. Unfortunately, the simple knowledge that someone is right is rarely enough, and I felt a somewhat irrational antipathy towards her. Although to be honest, I currently didn't need much of a reason to snap at anyone I met. Kyoshi seemed to have noticed that and decided not to interrogate me. I was sitting in the classroom and feverishly thinking all the possible reasons for why Ellie hadn't come to school that day. Of course, health issues looked plausible enough, even a hangover. But my brain was constantly coming up with the image of terrible events that would follow her absence. There was Kagimaru stuffing me into a trunk and bringing me to a forest. There were people giving me a shovel and making me dig my own grave. Meanwhile, Kagome was giving a dramatic speech of which I couldn't understand a word. Hold up. That sounds like one of the bad endings. That means I think I'm safe from that one. Nick, are you alright? What? Kyosuke was standing over me, looking concerned. Class ended 5 minutes ago and you're still sitting here with a blank stare. From outside I must have looked stupid, and that suddenly made me feel unbelievably disgusting, as if I ended up in the middle of the classroom with my pants off. Nah, if you've never had a dream about being in school without clothes, have you really went to school or dreamt about school? I shouted at him. I can't take my time to think anymore. You can, Nick. Cool down, it's not like you. What's like me then? I wanted to ask if you wanted to go to the cafeteria, since Ellie's not here. And how do you know she isn't? Everybody knows. He smiled idiotically. Who's everybody? Nick, calm down. Hey, it's Michael. I gave him an askew look, but still tried to get myself together. Fine, never mind. Did you two have a fight or what? No. My condolences. For what, I told you we didn't. Well, just in case. Kyosuke, Michael stopped him. Alright, shutting up. I didn't know how much longer I could bear with this tediousness at the belt and save me. Kagome is paying me no attention, as if the previous day had never happened. Finally, I decided to talk to her myself. And then Ellie's gonna show up. Hi, you want to tell me anything? Hello, Nikolai. What do you want me to say? Why do you always create misunderstandings? Misunderstandings? You were talking about your feminine intuition. Put yourself in Ellie's shoes, then. How would you react? If I were her, Nikolai, I wouldn't get jealous over trivial stuff. Gotcha. Alright. I really wanted to ask her whether she'd fallen in love with me. But asking it here in the presence of the entire class was absolutely not an option. Are you so surprised by it? By what exactly? You understand. Fine, forget it. I returned to my desk and barely managed to stay for the last class. If the mountain won't go to Muhammad, Ellie could skip school but not rehearsal. I walked to the studio with very mixed feelings. Kagome is giving me a rather ambiguous hints, but throwing herself at me. Perhaps in some other reality, I'd enjoy that much attention from a person of the opposite sex, but at the moment Ellie was more than enough for me. Moreover, I couldn't even say anything certain about Kagome. To some extent, I was sympathizing with her for sharing a common misfortune. On the other hand, her personality wasn't easy to deal with. But did I like her as a girl? When after a full course of 3 dishes, you're offered dessert, it's hard to remain objective. I decided to put the Kagome question away until better times and first deal with Ellie. Ishida and Tokyo and Ryder were standing outside the studio. Hey guys. Nick, you came. Ishida seemed surprised. Well yeah, I thought we had a rehearsal today. Yeah, about that. Elle said we're gonna get a new bass player. Another one. Tokyo Ryder remarked with a dumb grin. What? We're sorry. Is this a joke? I couldn't believe what I was hearing from him. We literally just found out a second ago. And you didn't say anything to her? What could we say? You know that the entire band is built around Ella, and if not for her, at least let me talk to her. She doesn't want to talk with you. Why don't you let me and her sort that out? Yeah, that wouldn't be a fair fight. What, if I try to pass, we'll fight? I smirked unsurely. Nick, don't push it. And I thought we were friends. It's not our decision. We should have an opinion, shouldn't you? Do you really agree with this? We know not what's on the young maiden's mind. Nick, I tried to talk to her, and she didn't explain anything. And you're fine with that? No, but what else do you expect me to do? Why are you protecting her like this? You aren't her bodyguards. She asked us not to let you in. And what if she asked you to throw a man into Tokyo Bay? Tokyo Rider only smirked idiotically again in response. Guys, really? Sorry, Nick. And who's the new bass player? An old guy. He isn't old, in his early 30s maybe. But he's a virtuoso. Right, can't argue with that. A virtuoso, huh? You can quickly replace a guitar by buying a new one at the shop, but I hadn't heard anything about a store that sells bass players in Tokyo. We were surprised too. No idea where Ellie found someone like him. It was hard for me to understand and accept the reasons behind their actions, but it was foolish to blame the guys. Who was I and who was Ellie to them? Besides, I couldn't forget about the Japanese mindset. The decisions of your superiors are indisputable, even if they seem strange. I never thought anything like this. Don't get so down. Maybe she'll change her mind tomorrow. Right, sure. You know that she can act on emotion sometimes. Do you believe that yourself? Ashita just averted his gaze, embarrassed. What came over her? Well, you should know better. In terms of music, we've had no problems with you. In terms of music, I repeated, miffled. So if Ellie kicked me out of the band, our relationship was over too? What about the rest? Maybe you could let me pass after all. I need to talk to her. Sorry, Nick. You two'd be better off talking tomorrow at school. Sure, if she shows up. Why not drop by her place when she cools down a bit? By her place. The mere thought that I could come face to face with Kobayashi-jun again terrified me. Well, we'll see. Well then. I turned around and walked away from the studio that had already become a second home to me. Yes, not of all of Ellie's actions seemed logical to me, and we weren't always on the same page, but this time she'd outdone herself. After all, if she wanted to break up with me, look me in the eye and say it. I felt irritation, anger, self-pity, and for some reason shame. As if something irrevocable had happened because of me. Catherine had already ditched me once, Himitsu had left as well, but this feeling was completely different. It wasn't complete devastation, but rather anger at myself for having done something wrong. You didn't. She's going through some stuff. Probably. Unless we're on a route for a bad ending. In that case, things are going really wrong. Was it about me scolding Ellie for taking drugs? Was it about Kagome? We're not showing my love clearly enough. All these reasons could be probable cause for a breakup, but they wouldn't be enough for such a reaction. Ellie acted like a cruel child ripping off the legs of harmless bugs. I was angry at her, at myself, and the entire world, as if I was left completely alone. I was angry at Ishida and Tokyo Rider for their cowardice. I was angry at Himitsu for choosing such a bad moment to go away and leave me with no shoulder to cry on. I was even angry at Kyosuke for his inability to be serious, which gave me no way to talk to him about what happened. A cold, really winter wind blew and I shivered. Heavy clouds were approaching from the east, promising a long rain, and I had to hurry home. But still, we were going to study together for several more months. Even if I wasn't about to visit our mansion, we were going to have more than enough chances to talk. And the thought immediately cheered me up, as if bringing back a seemingly extinguished light of hope. So did I want us to be together or not? A black foreign car was parked next to my house and I immediately knew what would follow. I slowly approached it, the driver's door opening. Kagemaru stepped out, but he paid no attention to me and just froze in place. The back door opened and I saw Kobayashi-jun in the flesh. Nikolai, would you spare me a half hour of your time? If he took the effort to write personally, there had to be a strong reason. I tensely swallowed and replied, Of course. I don't think I've done anything wrong. Please don't kill me. We entered the house. Kagemaru remained outside. Please take a seat. Thank you. He smiled politely and sat down. I took the seat across from him. Nikolai, Elizabeth was upset yesterday and I had to have a very serious conversation with her. I assume you know what this is about? Kobayashi-sama? Wait. I don't want to scare you, I just want to talk. Elizabeth told me that you got your eye on another girl at school. That's not the case. Ellie misunderstood. I have absolutely no interest in meddling in your teenage affairs. I don't know if you believe it too, but I was young once and made mistakes. However, there were mistakes and there were mistakes. I understand. I'm glad. At some point in time, I thought might have a positive influence on Elizabeth, but apparently her interest in you wasn't that serious. Kobayashi-sama. I exhaled piously, not knowing what to say next. It sounded as if I were listening to my own death sentence. But it's not your fault. Perhaps you indeed had some serious intentions in regards to my granddaughter. Of course they were serious. Did you know that when she was 10, Elizabeth really wanted to become a jockey and spend all her time at the stables? No, I didn't. Horses, music, tomorrow will be something else. I mean to say, the most important thing for me is that Ellie doesn't stray from the right course. But it's fine if she drifts from one direction or another along the way. But on that way, you have become a brief stop. Do you understand, Nikolai? What could I say? I couldn't quite let go of the feeling that Kagamaru was about to barge into the kitchen and snap my neck. Meanwhile, deep inside, I started to feel the bitterness of loss. And even though just recently it seemed to me that I had been different with Catherine, the pain was just as strong. Kobayashi, I really do love Ellie. The old man gave me that condescending smile that was clearly saying, everything passes, and so will this. You're still young, Nikolai. You have your entire life ahead of you. New friends and new love. And your own children who repeat your mistakes. How could I counter that? Shout that I love Ellie, that I'm ready to die for and throw a glove at him? You're a rational man, Nikolai. I'm absolutely flattered to hear you say that from you, or hear that from you, but... Don't you think it's a little premature to call it over after a day? Lovers fight sometimes. It seems Elizabeth has already found a replacement for you in the band, hasn't she? You've got your hands on this too? Don't forget yourself, Nikolai. I'm doing what is best for Elizabeth. When she grows up, she'll thank me. You used to say you used to be young. Then you must understand me. It's simple. I've been in your shoes, but you've not been in mine. Nobody's arguing. But have you thought what would happen if Ellie changes her mind? People rarely take old toys out of the closet after they've grown bored with them. But we're talking about people, not toys. It's all relative, Nikolai. So that's it? What else is there? Will you just allow me to keep living my life? I personally have had no quarrel with you. Kobayashi-jin smirked malevolently. That seemed like only half the sentence he wanted to say, but the rest never followed. Now if you've understood it all, Nikolai. You have a nice house. A pity about your parents. Thank you. I saw the old man in the car, and Lon kept standing in the yard, thinking about what happened. To some extent, the actions of Ellie's grandfather seemed just as chaotic and senseless as Ellie's antics. First, he was asking me to keep an eye on her, and keep her out of trouble, and then he was personally informing me that it was over between us. Perhaps there was more of a human in that wise and cruel gray-haired man than what met the eye. You can hardly raise a good person by keeping them in a gilded cage their entire life, but in my head, all these concepts sounded like emotionless numbers on the page of a scientific report. There were no feelings, emotions, or soul to them. Meanwhile, I'd lost the girl I'd been planning to build a future with. And what did that matter whether Nikolai, Anakin, the drugs, Ellie herself, or her grandfather were to blame for it? I sat down on the porch and got in my thoughts. Ellie's laughing face was clearly appeared before my eyes, if only she weren't a Kobayashi. I threw away all these ifs along with my other fear and conformities and suddenly realized how much I missed her. Arena had appeared in my life and disappeared just as quickly. Kobayashi-jin did nothing to me in the end. But the whole time I kept being afraid. Was that fear the reason I lost Ellie? If I'd been more self-assured, if I'd been showing my feelings more obviously, could things have been different? At this moment, thinking about Ellie was making sobs well up in my throat. Nikolai? Kagome was standing at the gate and looking at me attentively. God, you again. I sighed in desperation, but noticed that I wasn't that angry about her yet another accidental visit. Let me guess, just passing by? Come on, Nikolai, you're a smart guy. Of course I was following you. She came closer and virtually hung over me. And how much did you see? How much did I see? She repeated as if not understanding the question. I saw a person who looked like Kobayashi-jin walked out of your house, got in a car, and left. Did you have a fight with Kobayashi-san? Why do you think that? Why would her grandfather spend his time on you otherwise? Kagome grinned. Thanks for the kind words. Nikolai, I'm telling you the truth while you apparently prefer to hide in your fantasy world. I'm not gonna argue with you. Don't you understand that you and Kobayashi could never work? What are you, a Cupid to judge us? I wanted to get really angry at Kagome, but either I lacked the energy or simply agreed with her deep inside. It's always easier to see things from outside. So what did you see? You two don't match each other. She exclaimed as if telling me an obvious truth. And why is that? First, because she's Kobayashi and you're an ordinary person. I don't mean to say that being ordinary is bad, not at all. But in 5, 10 years, her destiny will be one, maybe that of a million, even a billion people may have. Can you imagine yourself next to her when she takes her place at the head of Kobayashi Corporation? Have not planned that far ahead. Why do you think that Ellie would necessarily follow in her grandfather's steps? She wants to play music. Do you even believe that yourself? Kagome laughed loudly and moved her face even closer to mine. Nikolai, I want to help you avoid deep disappointment in the future. You know, her grandfather was telling me more or less the same thing today. He also doesn't want Ellie to make mistakes. Have you thought that he might be right? Either way, it's none of your business. Have you realized yet, Nikolai? Was I afraid, or was the reason more complex? This won't be a problem with me. She ran her hand down my cheek. Kagome, why so formal? Kagome, this isn't appropriate right now. But I can't just stop loving you. Love is a very big word, don't you think? It is what it is. You can't control whims of your heart. Oh right, sure, I mumbled. You love Kobayashi, so why do you refuse me the right to love you? I'm not refusing anyone anything. But weren't these advances exactly the reason for Ellie's jealousy? But you've been behaving strangely, following me like you're doing your dangdest to make Ellie and me break up. I just want to spend more time with you, and if something so small was enough for Kobayashi, you should wonder if she ever loved you for real. She responded innocently. Indeed, there was undeniable logic to Kagome's words. But such was Ellie's personality. Rises and falls, flashes and eclipses, cries and silence, major and minor. That's what I liked about her. That's why I was drawn to her. Don't look at her, Nikolai. Look only at me. Yeah, that's going real Yandere vibes. Ellie raised my head so that our eyes met. The passion on her face looked genuine. Was she always that beautiful and I just never noticed? But the image of Ellie, laughing Ellie, crying Ellie, angry Ellie was still strong before my eyes. Even though it took me so much time to realize it. Sorry. I carefully pushed her away and stood up. Kobayashi-san is lucky. Kagome suddenly smirked. She doesn't seem to think so. Who knows? Still, thank you for your sincerity. She moved her hair back with an abrupt gesture and gave me an incredibly serious look. I'd prefer you thank me differently. Sorry, but I can't. I do love Ellie. Well, I see. Goodbye then, Nikolai. She said coldly and left. And that's it? Of course, it's hard for anyone to take a no for an answer, but Kagome's reaction looked abnormal again. Did I even do the right thing? After Catherine, I had much less moral strength left to fight for love, and now I'd have to fight Kobayashi-Joan as well. I sighed and looked at the sky. Half of autumn had already passed, while my life seemed to be starting anew. I had to correct the mistakes I'd made and win back the love of the girl I didn't deserve. Did I even stand a chance? The memories about the short period of time we'd spent together were telling me that I did. It was hard to believe that Ellie would stop loving me in a single day. And even if I have to fight her, I wasn't going to back off. The cold wind out of nowhere made me go back to the house. It seemed that beyond the doorstep was left not only the cold of the upcoming winter, but also the diffidence, the doubts and the hesitation that had been torturing me for so long. XXXX 1987. Ah, so it's a random day. And we'll leave off here. I hope you guys have enjoyed today's video. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button, comment, subscribe. Man, I sure hope we're not on a route to get a bad ending, but I think we missed one of them. As always, goodbye.